Since making 7/7 Ripple Effect, new things have come to light about Mohammad Siddiqui Khan and Shehzad Tanweer and their involvement in Operation Crevice in 2004, during which they were photographed on numerous occasions with the suspects involved in Operation Crevice. However, they were not investigated. Whilst the others were not only investigated, Omar Khayyam, Anthony Garcia, Wahid Mahmood, Jawad Akbar, and Salahuddin Amin were arrested, charged and convicted of terrorist charges. Among the remaining 40 were 2 men, whose names were to become notorious: Mohammad Siddiqui Khan, the alleged ringleader of the July 7 bombers, and his alleged right-hand man, Shehzad Tanweer. Operation Crevice was an investigation into a group of Muslims who are alleged to have been manufacturing ANFO bombs from ammonium nitrate fertilizer and fuel oil in the UK, similar to what Timothy McVeigh used in his Oklahoma City truck bomb in the USA. Mohammad Siddiqui Khan was recorded meeting Khayyam 4 times in the final stages of Operation Crevice. On one occasion, he even asked Khayyam, "Are you a terrorist?" How could they do that, unless Khan was wired up with a microphone and told to ask that question? Who would ask that question if not told to do so that the answer could be recorded and used in evidence? Shehzad Tanweer also met Khayyam around this time. Operation Crevice wound up in the spring of 2004, just around the time that the BBC Panorama programme, London Under Attack, was being made and broadcast in May. I and others, including Charles Shoebridge, who is a well-known security expert, have suspected for quite some time that Mohammad Siddiqui Khan, codenamed Ibrahim, according to Mohammed Junaid Babar, and Shehzad Tanweer were in fact MI5 assets, and this Operation Crevice evidence is further indication that they were indeed working for MI5. Charles Shoebridge is a writer, broadcaster and independent authority on issues of security, intelligence, terrorism and crime. A graduate of history and politics and of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, he served for almost 2 decades until 2000 in diverse frontline policing and military roles, specializing in counter-terrorism and intelligence operations. Prior to his service at Scotland Yard and elsewhere with the Metropolitan Police, he also worked in counter-terrorism as a commissioned officer in the British Army. He has made numerous TV, radio and newspaper contributions, including as one of the host presenters of the critically acclaimed TV series Crisis Command.
Well, with me now in the studio, Charles Shoebridge, former anti-terrorist intelligence officer with the police here in London. Is this a big miss by the authorities?
Well, I think we've already established, actually, in the panoply of information that's emerged since the 7th of July attacks that suggests that certainly Khan and certainly Tanweer were known to the security services to varying degrees. That has emerged already, but there's no question that this new information, which I think sounds credible, certainly it's the sort of information that is given to police quite regularly about the activities of Islamic extremists and others of terrorist interest, should have added to that picture. And so once again, we're talking about the intelligence game, if you like, of a jigsaw, in effect, putting together all these disparate elements of information to come up with a profile of a person and assess the risk from that person correctly. That isn't what happened in this case.
Yeah, because we've got what this man says he did, and there's new information just this week from the United States saying that the US tipped off the British authorities about Mohammed Siddiqui Khan anyway, and then there was the original sort of admission, which came quite late, from the security services here, that they were aware of him and that they'd been following him tangential to another investigation. I mean, it does all mount up, it seems, over time, that there was more and more information there.
No, that's right, and I don't think, again, that's a surprise to people who actually worked in the industry, if you like, of intelligence. It was always going to be highly improbable that somebody comes straight out as what the media was calling a clean skin, and suddenly becomes a suicide bomber.
Well, the media, led on by briefings from the authorities.
I think that's absolutely right, and there was a good reason for that, I'm sure, which was, from their perspective anyway, which was, of course, if these are clean skins, how can we blame the security services for not having been on their trail? As it's turned out, as I think was predictable and predicted, this has turned out to be not the case. Really, the level of information that was coming in about Khan, particularly if these American reports especially, which now seem to be being backed up by the actual American authorities, not just appearing in an author's book, that they tipped off the British about the specifics of Khan. And this was quite a serious plot in the United States that we were talking about, an attempt to blow up synagogues and so on. The amount of information coming in and the quality of information coming in, the fact that that has been so consistently overlooked, it would appear, by the Security Service MI5, to me suggests really only one of two options. Either A, we've got a level of incompetence that would be unusual even for the security service, but B, possibly, and this is a possibility, that this man Khan may even have been working as an informant for the security service. It's difficult otherwise to see how it can be that they've so covered his tracks in the interim.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
The only logical explanation for Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, codename Ibrahim, and Shahzad Tanweer not being investigated as part of Operation Crevice, and asking Omar Khayyam if he was a terrorist, so that it could be recorded as evidence, is that they were working for MI5 and were sent to infiltrate the group and report back to MI5. This would give another possible explanation for the origins of the so-called suicide videos of Mohammed Siddiqui Khan and Shahzad Tanweer, who are reported to have frequently made visits to Pakistan to allegedly visit terrorist training camps. How did Mohammed Siddiqui Khan do that on a schoolteacher's pay? The most likely explanation now is that they were asked to make those videos by MI5 to give themselves some credibility with extremist Muslims and the terrorist training camps, so that they could more easily infiltrate them for MI5 and MI6, who would be financing them and their trips abroad. The same videos could then have been edited and used by the authorities after the 7/7 attacks to try to frame them. People in Beeston who knew them said that they looked younger in those videos than they looked in 2005, and that they did not talk like that, and the movement of their lips did not synchronize with what they were supposedly saying in the videos. Survivors and family members of the deceased have quite rightfully asked why MI5 did not arrest Mohammed Siddiqui Khan and Shahzad Tanweer as part of Operation Crevice, and thus prevent the 7/7 attacks from happening and save everyone who was affected by 7/7 from being murdered, maimed, injured, bereaved, or traumatized. The only logical answer is that they were British patriots working for MI5 all along, and then, when they had outlived their usefulness and knew enough to be a liability to MI5, especially if their cover was blown by Operation Crevice, they were set up as patsies and eliminated. As a further indication that they were working for MI5, former Justice Department prosecutor and terror expert John Loftus was filmed in an interview talking about Harun Rashid Aswat, whom we were told by the authorities was the mastermind behind the 7/7 attacks. John Loftus says that Aswat is an MI6 agent.
Aswat is believed to be the mastermind of all the bombings in London.
On the 7/7 and 7/21, this is the guy, we think.
This is the guy, and what's really embarrassing is that the entire British police are out chasing him, and one wing of the British government, MI6, or the British Secret Service, has been hiding him. Now, we knew about this guy Aswat. Back in 1999, he came to America. The Justice Department wanted to indict him in Seattle because him and his buddy were trying to set up a terrorist training school in Oregon.
So they indicted the buddy, right? But why didn't they indict him?
Well, it comes out, we've just learned that the headquarters of the U.S. Justice Department ordered the Seattle prosecutors not to touch Aswat.
Hello. Now, hold on. Why?
And that's, well, apparently Aswat was working for British intelligence. Now, Aswat's boss, the one-armed Captain Hook, he gets indicted 2 years later. So the guy above him and below him get indicted, but not Aswat. So all of a sudden, he disappears. He's in South Africa. We think he's dead. We don't know he's down there. Last month, the South African Secret Service come across the guy.
Yeah, now the CIA says,
alive.
oh, he's alive. Our CIA says, okay, let's arrest him. But the Brits say no again?
The Brits say no. Now, at this point, 2 weeks ago, the Brits know that the CIA wants to get a hold of Haroon. So what happens? He takes off again, goes right to London. He isn't arrested when he lands. He isn't arrested when he leaves.
Even though he's on a watch list.
He's on the watch list. The only reason he could get away with that was if he was working for British intelligence. He was a wanted man.
And then takes off the day before the bombings, as I understand it?
Yeah, and goes to Pakistan. The Pakistanis arrest him.
They jail him.
They jail him. He's released within 24 hours.
We were told by the British authorities that the alleged bombers made phone calls to Aswat prior to the explosions. Aswat came into the UK towards the end of June 2005 through the port of Felixstowe. He left the UK on an early morning flight from Heathrow on the day of 7/7. When the police were doing their investigations into the 7/7 atrocity, they came across evidence that Haroon Aswat had made mobile phone calls to the alleged suicide bombers just hours before the attacks. He had made about 20 calls to them. With the suspicious travel movements by Haroon, and along with the many mobile phone calls he allegedly made, he was designated as prime suspect and mastermind of the 7/7. It was at this point that he was traced to South Africa, Zimbabwe, and watched until he tried to cross the border to Zambia. He was arrested. Once in custody in Zambia, Aswat was then deported to the UK for questioning about 7/7. During this time, MI6 then declared that he was an agent of theirs, and that Aswat had nothing to do with the 7/7 atrocity, and that he will not be interviewed. MI6 basically overrode the police inquiries. All of this information further indicates that 7/7 was a false flag psyop carried out by the security services, and that it was not carried out by Muslims.
It should be noted that neither Mohammed Siddiqui Khan nor Shehzad Tanweer specify what their targets were in their videos. It is also interesting to note that no one has ever claimed responsibility for the 7/7/2005 bombings, except for a message on a fake Al-Qaeda website on the same day that was traced to Texas in the USA.
As already stated, if Tanweer and Khan were working for MI5 and MI6 as informants and asked to infiltrate extremist Muslim groups, then that would explain the making of these videos, to be used as part of their credentials when attempting to gain the trust of extremists.
2 years afterwards, because more and more people doubt the official story and are proving it to be lies and deception, and are rightfully demanding an independent investigation, the police have arrested, frightened, intimidated and harassed Mohammed Siddiqui Khan's widow into publicly condemning her husband. She has a young daughter to protect and has stated that she is now afraid of the police. They kept her in custody for 6 days to intimidate her and then showed her what they claim is her husband's will and suicide note. Obviously, this was done to get her to condemn her husband publicly, in exchange for the authorities' implied agreement to leave her alone, to which she will have agreed in order to protect herself and her young daughter from further harassment. Where were these documents found, and why did it take 2 years for them to be shown to her? They are, after all, her rightful property, if genuine. 2 years is ample time to forge a short handwritten note and signature on a will. In view of the amount of time this suicide note has taken to be mentioned, the timing of it, and all the lies and evidence the authorities have told, fabricated and planted, it cannot be trusted and must be considered another forgery, along with any other new so-called evidence that they might come up with. So the scene is set for the training exercise to go ahead. The fake terrorists have been recruited, the suicide videos have been made, and everyone has been given basic instructions for the day that the exercise is to be put into operation, 7/7/2005. The 4 mock terrorist actors were to meet at Luton train station at 07:20 a.m. on the 7th of July 2005 and catch the 07:40 a.m. train from Luton to King's Cross Thameslink station with their pretend bomb backpacks, and then split up and catch 3 tube trains and 1 bus to prearranged destinations where the fake explosions were to take place as part of the training exercise. Finally, the big day arrived. Everyone was ready. Everyone was either already where he was meant to be or was heading there.